Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. In some shocking news, yes, pun intended, original Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley has passed away at 74. This is very unexpected, although not entirely surprising. He has had some health issues and he had a recent fall in his studio that led to him canceling shows the remainder of his tour. And whenever I see that happen, it always makes me worry. And unfortunately, he has now passed away. Ace Frehley joined Kiss in 1973, helping the band to become one of the most influential bands in all of rock music. He really helped define their sound with his guitar playing and really ignited a generation of guitar players that would come in the wake of his playing that he did with Kiss. And there's a lot of different musicians that have credited Ace and Kiss with helping them or making them to decide to create bands. Joe Elliott from Def Leppard for sure. Scott Ian and Anthrax are really all the members there, all the members of Pantera, and pretty much every glam metal band that came up through the 80s into the early 90s would cite Kiss and a lot of the guitar players, specifically Ace Frehley, with making them pick up guitars and wanting to learn to play and start bands. And I think that in and of itself is such an amazing accomplishment for the great guitar player that is Ace Frehley, in how many people he would influence to start bands. Without Kiss, without Ace Frehley, there is a lot of bands we might not have today if it wasn't for the band, their playing, and what they did, and members like Ace Frehley. He contributed to 10 studio albums from Kiss, although he's actually credited on 11. He's shown on the cover of Creatures of the Night, but does not play on this one. The band hoping he would stick around if they included him on it, but unfortunately not. Between 1974 and 81, the Space Ace himself was a key component to the Kiss sound. In my opinion, really helping to define the Kiss sound. When I think of a specific thing that would define the Kiss sound, for me, every time I hear an Ace Frehley song, that to me is immediate knowing that it is Kiss. Whereas some of the other material that was played by other members would veer out into other territory, but Ace Frehley's music was always definitely defining of Kiss. First taking lead vocals on the song Shock Me from 1977's Love Gun album. It's one of the band's defining songs, and oftentimes his material would sometimes stand out more than the material from the other guys. Case in point, with his 1978 solo album, when all the different members decided to go make solo albums in 78, it was actually Ace Frehley's solo album that did the best out of all of them. And having the biggest hit off of the albums was his cover of the song New York Groove. And I believe it's the only song from the solo albums that the band would ever play live, coming from this album here. But Ace was always amazing at cover songs, in particular the Rolling Stones 2000 Man that was on Dynasty. I absolutely love that one when that one was later done as part of MTV Unplugged album. I immediately was hooked on it and loved that he chose to perform that one for that event and show and recording. Now, outside of Kiss, he recorded 10 solo albums, so having 20 total albums of defining music from him is absolutely a gift that we can certainly all continue to enjoy. But his contributions through the solo material too made huge impacts in the rock world, influencing generation after generation of guitar players. We had first his Ace Frehley, Frehley's Comet period, actually only doing 2 under that heading. An album that I particularly enjoy from him is The Trouble Walking. This, in fact, was my first Ace Frehley album in his cover of the ELO classic Do Ya. I heard that off of here and immediately fell in love with the way that he would interpret covers. Now, of his newer albums, the album Spaceman, which actually has Gene Simmons guesting on here. This one here, I think, is one of his best later day solo albums, and still love pulling this one out and playing it top to bottom. It is a fantastic album that he would do. Now, of all those sort of things and the different, people that he would influence and so forth, by 1996, when Kiss would reunite and return to stadiums, Ace Frehley continued to inspire new generations of fans and people to pick up and play the guitar, part of Guitar Hero, and the various different ways that that would all come about. But amazing that even at that point, when the band out on the road in 96, 97, 98, really showing all the younger bands how it was done, how they did it back in the 70s. Let's bring the show back. They really did that, Ace being a part of it. And they would release several live albums that were fantastic and great to enjoy. But unfortunately, only one additional studio album, Psycho Circus, 1998. But in my opinion, his song, Into the Void, was the highlight of this album. Wishing there was another standout solo song from him. He guested vocal on several of the other tracks, but the only one that was an actual Ace Frehley written, sung, performed song, Into the Void, one of his best songs that he would do with Kiss. And after Ace would leave Kiss in 2002, unfortunately, the band never really patched things up at that point, and he did not take part in the farewell tour that they did in 2023, or the final two performances at Madison Square Garden. Another unfortunate thing now, even more so with his passing. But as I mentioned with this album here, Spaceman, he did at times have a good relationship with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, as those guys would guest on his albums. Peter Criss at times too guesting with Ace Frehley on his albums. So at least even going on while not in Kiss, he was still able to enjoy good times with the other original members of the band and recording. And, I had the good fortune of seeing Ace Frehley as part of the 1996 reunion shows. And maybe it was my love of him as a solo artist, but I always felt he was the standout guy up there on stage, really putting on the show with his guitar histrionics and different things that he would do, including shooting the fireball, whatever would come out, but also the smoking guitar and a lot of those cool things that we, had from him in the 70s, now performing and doing those sort of things, and getting to see that on the reunion tour with the makeup was very cool. I would also see him on the Psycho Circus tour, but I also had the good fortune of seeing Ace solo. And really, between the three times that I saw him, I would actually have to say that I liked him best solo. But when you get an entire show of Ace Frehley, not that I don't love entire shows of Kiss, that is a whole thing unto itself. And the time that I got to see Ace was also a very special moment, because it was when he did the 9/11 tribute show called New York Steel in November of 2001, that was to help raise money for the victims and the families' victims. And that performance that he did, because on that evening we had other performers like Twisted Sister reunited for that. Sebastian Bach was part of that. Anthrax was part of that. A lot of New Jersey rockers were the ones that came together for that. But I think his performance of that night was definitely one of the highlights and best performances. And I have such great memories from that. In 2014, all four original members of Kiss were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And they're definitely one of the true bands that I think definitely deserves to be there. We can all debate it, ad infinitum. A lot of bands that get brought in there, I don't necessarily know if they really truly do. But for what Kiss was, what they created, what they did, the individual members, their talents, and what they brought, and who they influenced throughout the career and the time that they were part of the band. In particular, Ace Frehley definitely deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Rest in peace, Ace Frehley. You will be missed, but not forgotten. And at this point here is where, of course, I would definitely tell you guys to pull out your Kiss albums, the favorite ones that have Ace on it, your solo albums from Ace, any of the different things that you want to do to celebrate his life. Now is the time with the music. Let's remember the good times. Let's remember all that he leaves behind, all that he gave us when he was here, and enjoy that and remember that about Ace Frehley.